Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, December 21st. This is our last regular meeting for 2021. We are meeting tonight on the traditional territory of Squamish Nation, Hatsqualawin, Quistulukmuk, Squamish, Okameo. Council, motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Council French, second by Council Hereford. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any notice of motion? Seeing none, we do have a delegation this evening. Ms. Simons and Ms. Holmes are here from Howe Sound Biosphere Region Initiative and the Squamish Environmental Society. So I will turn it over to the both of you. You've got 5 minutes to present to council this evening.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much. Good evening, council, and season's greetings. I'm calling you in from Lions Bay, and I apologize for any background noise. It's Christmas has started here in our household, but I'm calling in tonight on behalf of the Howe Sound Biosphere Region Initiative Society. And we are the managers, our organization, and managers of the UNESCO Akatsum Howe Sound Biosphere. And part of our commitment to UNESCO is one of the actions is to define biodiversity conservation objectives and a strategy. I was contacted recently by the Squamish Environmental Society regarding the habitat connectivity, the wildlife habitat connectivity project. This project has our interest as many biosphere regions are addressing these issues of development and human wildlife interaction, and of course needing to address one of the world's major issues along with climate change, which is curbing biodiversity loss. In researching the backstory on this particular project of the Squamish Environment Society, I've noticed that in Squamish there's a tremendous amount of support. I watched the May 2019 presentation by Joe Gordon, I believe it was, and I heard your concerns about how to move forward with this particular major project of wildlife corridors and wildlife habitat connectivity. And one of the major concerns was about who would lead a project like this, which crosses jurisdictions. In November, the Squamish Environment Society submitted the Phase 1 preliminary scoping report by Coast Range Environmental. This report was submitted to council as part of, with a budget request to move into Phase 2 of the project. So it's a budget request for $40,000. I really commend the Squamish Environment Society and Coast Range Environment for this very professional report, and there's a tremendous amount of excellent information in there. So we understand that funding was not approved to move forward. So our society is here to support and take a co-lead with the Squamish Environmental Society to move to this Phase 2 and help to find external funding. Our initial conversations with funders want to have some assurance from the District of Squamish that this work would be supported, that these reports would be received, and that Council and District of Squamish could demonstrate that support with having staff help and cooperate with this Phase 2 with Coast Range Environmental. So my request, and Judith is here from the Environmental Society, have any questions, but the request would be to ask for a letter of support or a resolution of support from Council. It would go a long way to demonstrate to funders and other agencies that District of Squamish would be on board with this as we try to progress through this major project with other jurisdictions.
Thank you, Ms. Simons. Council, do you have any questions at this point? I guess for council's clarity, a letter of support for a project doesn't necessarily commit our resources, but in your comments, you suggested that actually might require a commitment of time and resources from the district, and that's something that usually makes us quite nervous outside of the budget process. So I'm wondering if you can maybe say a bit more about that.
Certainly, consultant is suggesting that about approximately 10 hours a month at this point, just to answer questions and provide information. So in order to advance what is really a very large project, you've got the willingness of community, and you've got an organization that has taken this step. And if I fear that the report may not have gotten the attention that it might have needed, because there's a lot of great information in there. So I think a conversation to just understand the amount of input that might be required in phase 2 would be a good start.
I'm sorry, when is the funding request being submitted?
There was a funding request in November, and it came with the report. Actually, I think it was submitted, I understand they submitted it in October, but it didn't quite make it onto the council.
Sorry, I meant this external funding request.
Oh, okay.
Is that in January?
That would be in the spring, is sort of by the end of March, but we're trying to have this planning and gather up all the necessary documentation, everything that's needed as soon as possible.
I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to refer this to staff to have a conversation to understand the scope and confirm the requirements before we agree to a letter of support. So I might move that we refer this to staff for a conversation and bring back to council a recommendation. Seconded by Councilor Reyes. Go ahead.
Thank you. And actually, at a recent council coffee chat, I met with one of the representatives of the Squamish Environmental Society who presented me with a copy of that consultant's report. And we did have an interesting conversation around that and what the district of Squamish, if you look at where we're confined within our boundaries, might be able to contribute. And we did agree, I think, that significantly some of the areas of concern would actually be outside district boundaries and just immediately adjacent. So it is certainly a cooperative, multi-jurisdictional issue. I'm happy to support this motion to see it go ahead for a little bit of staff review so that we can pin down our resources. Our resources, I think, as everybody can appreciate, are quite tight and pretty well maxed out. But see what we could contribute and if that is feasible. But it probably, in this particular case, would also need the assistance of or input from the regional district board and staff as well. Certainly, animals don't necessarily live within municipal boundaries. So I will support it on that basis. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, it's great to have the biosphere region involved. This is a cross-jurisdictional issue, and it feels like one of those key pieces that the biosphere region can be a co-lead on. So we'll refer this to our staff and bring it back early in the new year so that we can give you a more definitive answer. But thank you for coming. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
God save you. Bye.
We're on to item 5, consideration of unscheduled public attendance. So this is anyone that might be attending online, because there's no one in the gallery this evening from the public who has an item they feel cannot wait until we reconvene on January 4th. Seeing no one, we're on to item 8 under bylaws. We have a number of bylaws up for adoption. The first is the District of Squamish Fees and Charges Bylaw, Amendment Bylaw for Utility Fees number 2875, 2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, for the first time since I've been on council, the District of Squamish 2022 to 2026 5-year financial plan bylaw number 2876, 2021 be adopted by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor French. Councillor Pettengill, you were saving your comments till this evening, I believe, so you didn't jinx anything. Would you like to say anything or no?
Yeah, I guess, well, I just, I don't want to go on, but just reflecting on all the challenges that our municipality, but everyone in the whole province has faced. And I think it's quite an accomplishment how we've managed to largely stay on track. And I think it's something to be quite proud of, really appreciative of our staff for the improvements to the information we receive and always having clear, succinct answers available when we have questions. The other, I guess just reflecting a little bit on everything is sort of a budget discussion. And so sometimes it's hard to separate out what we deal with, but I've been thinking a lot about, are we focusing on what we're losing, what we're gaining, or what we have to give? And I just wanted to leave that thought out. I guess that I'm trying to think about that a lot as I've thought through this budget. I think we've made some tough compromises, but good compromises in the budget and 5-year plan. And I hope it sets us off on a good path for the future. And so thank you everyone for working so hard on this.
Thank you, Councillor Pettengill. Any other comments tonight? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, District of Squamish Equipment Replacement Reserve Bylaw. Amendment Bylaw number 2877, 2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, District of Squamish Floodplain Management Bylaw, Amendment Bylaw number 2880, 2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Pettengill. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on to item 9A, 1 Airport Strategy Scope. I believe turn this over to Mr. Plum and Ms. Gill.
Thank you. Can you hear me, folks?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. I'm just loading in my video, and my video is not firing up for some reason. Oh, there, but hopefully, 1 second here. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, it's just coming up now. I just need to put it in presentation mode.
Okay. Oops, slideshow, sorry, what's that? All right, thank you very much. Here we are at the last meeting of the year. So back on November 2nd, staff were in to council presenting a proposed airport strategy scope. And at that session, council gave staff some feedback. The motion at that time was not endorsed, but council provided feedback to staff. So we are back to council today, incorporating the feedback that we heard, and are here to seek endorsement of a revised airport strategy scope today. So back on November 2nd, the scope that we presented back then had a fairly aggressive time frame, and initially we were proposing to complete all of the items in columns sort of 1, 2, and 3 as early as possible and into early 22. And then we would be advancing any recommendations around the existing tenants, also, springish 22. And then any further due diligence that might come out of all that work regarding anything beyond any operational impacts at the airport beyond the existing tenants was going to be deferred into 2023. And what I'm going to show you here now is just a comparison of the 3 different sort of sets of data we're working with. So all of the steps that were shown in the previous slide from left to right are listed now from top to bottom in column 1. And then we're showing to the right of that the proposed scope, what we heard from council, and then what's being proposed here tonight. And so what you'll see is that in going to the council feedback column in column 3, what we heard from council that day was to focus initially our efforts around best practices and operations management based on the airport we have today rather than where the airport might be in the future, to sort of tidy operations up as we are now. And that all the other type of analysis, like economic development and especially community engagement and the other analysis that were contemplated, and steps could all happen later in 2023. And so what you're seeing there on that table in column 4 and between column 3 and column 4 is here in that shaded dark green are area, and you'll see that with the proposed scope in column 4, are areas where the new scope that you're going to see tonight are aligned. The only other thing that we wanted to talk to council about tonight was the cell that's in lighter green and says spring 22 for the technical analysis. And I'm just going to explain more about that in a second. So what you're seeing now is the proposed revised scope and timeline that was attached to your report. And so we've incorporated into this the advancement of the best practices in operations management, which is step 2 up front. You'll see things like economic development analysis and community engagement. Step 6 and 7 are now moved back into winter 23. Existing lease negotiations, if they're as endorsed through all the other work that's been done, will occur later in 23, and anything beyond that at the airport would occur in 2024. You also see the technical analysis has been moved into spring of 2022, and then the reason for that is that work is largely, it is titled technical analysis, so it's largely technical. It's a lot of number crunching. And it's not information that we really feel is necessary to have community engagement on before we do that work. But we actually think that if we do that work in 22, it's really going to help set us up to make the most out of the community engagement that's going to occur in winter of 23. So we're proposing to start that this year or in 22 and give ourselves some time to get that work done before we go out to the community. You'll also see a new step in there, 2 new steps actually, step 3 and 5. So step number 3 is what we're proposing here is that we don't enter into long-term lease negotiations with any of the existing tenants until step 6 and 7, especially the community engagement, is complete. So what we need to do is extend the leases that are there now, and we're proposing that we would look at extending them for a 2-year period. And while we're doing that, we expect that there could be some updated management steps and rules and regulations that come out of the best practices analysis that we would put in place for the summer through the spring. And then what that does is it gives us this new step 5 after the summer season busier time of the year is completed. We've had a chance to hopefully implement some of those things that we learned early in the process over that period of time. And then we can look back and see how things worked and have that information at our disposal as we look to do any long-term discussions that are warranted later in 2023. So with that, I'll turn it back to council. And as they see the recommendation on the screen that was in your report is to move the proposed revised scope forward tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plum. Council, any questions at this point? Councilor Anderson?
Thank you. Mr. Plum, my question will concern the scope of steps 4 and 6 and potentially 7, 4 being the technical analysis, 6, the economic development analysis, and step 7, the community engagement. So some portions of the airport lands have been used for other non-aviation uses in the past. And in your November 2nd presentation to our regular meeting, your report highlighted employment lands opportunities, to quote, stated generally, including aviation-related or airport-related. That is, we were discussing employment lands opportunities at the airport lands in an inclusive way, including aviation and non-aviation. So there may be some potential in future. One of the leases that was previously used by one of the former uses has reverted to the district. But there may need to be some technical assessment for some portions of airport lands and maybe some economic development evaluation as well. So my question is, when we approach step 4 and step 6, are these going to exclude technical review and economic development review, respectively, of potential non-aviation uses? That is, that we're going to have to come back later once the aviation related is assessed and assessed for other potential uses. And why I'm asking this is that there are some potential people interested, for example, greenhouses, as I've mentioned on November 2nd discussion, Will they have to wait until all of these steps are completed and we come back and review for their needs? Can these non-aviation uses of a portion of these lands be assessed also during step 4 and also during step 6? Or are we limiting ourselves to airport aviation uses in these respective analyses? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, through you, Mayor and Council. I think that initially what we want to do in step 4 is, and you'll see 4B says layout. You may recall when we were back in November on that meeting that we shared with you a potential hazard zones at the airport. And so I think what we want to do is work with the consultants. And part of what we're trying to do in 4B is figure out how much land we really have to work with at the airport that's depending on the hazard zones, and spend a little bit more time with that. And so that's why 4B is there. And so I think, and then once we do that, I think it's going to help us have a better sense as to what opportunities might be available at the airport. And I think, and I also, it's a bit premature for me to guess how that's going to take us. And I think that maybe there's an opportunity for us to come back to council later in the spring once we've had a little more time to work with this data set and see where it takes us. Because, you know, we definitely have, you know, we have a reverter on title that says to be used for aviation purposes, and we have used it for non-aviation purposes in the past. And so we definitely want to explore that to its fullest extent. But as I may have said back in that meeting on November 2nd as well, is, you know, we also are looking for, if we are going to be looking at economic development opportunities for ones that don't necessarily increase air movements or have, you know, big impacts on the community, but they also fall underneath the qualifications of the reverter. So I don't know if I have a firm, clear answer for you on that at this point. I think what I'd like to do is have some time with the consultant, have some time with the layout, see what we're working with, and then maybe we can come back to council at a later date and have a further discussion on that.
Thank you, Mr. Plum. I've highlighted the issue and we have discussed in the past, and I'm satisfied that it'll continue to be given some kind of attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council? All right, seeing none. Mr. Plum has suggested that we advance the airport strategy based on the scope proposed this evening. Is there someone to move that? Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any comments? You want to speak to it, Councillor Herford? Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. Just thinking that efforts to get long-term lease discussions started with the airport users are long overdue, so I'm enthusiastically supporting the staff recommendation and the plan that has been developed. We have a well thought out plan in front of us, and it's time to get to work on advancing that plan so that the patient tenants at the airport can finally start planning business operations into the long term. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Race.
Thank you. The changes to the scope are actually answered my concerns that were raised at the original meeting in November, and particularly around conflicts and current conflicts and possible future conflicts, and seeing if best practices and layout and things of that nature can contribute to mitigate those. So I'm happy with this scope and look forward to seeing some of the results from it.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I'll just cite a passage from step 1 in the staff presentation. At this point, the focus will be on opportunities to improve the current operations management based on the existing tenancies and not on an expanded airport. I think the public we can alleviate public interest and concern regarding this. We can also keep in mind that airport functions are not only increased takeoffs and landing, and there are some opportunities to increase the value and the services provided by our airport that don't involve takeoffs and landings. So increased airport functions. So I'm satisfied with the scope and the presentation, and hopefully the public will be as they hang with us as we proceed the next couple of years according to plan. Thank you.
All right. Pleased to support this motion. I think it's important that we get our own house in order and the current state of affairs up to a best practice level before we go deeper. So I'm pleased to see that the scope's changed and has addressed my concerns. Thank you. Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Plum. Happy
Yeah,
holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for a great year. Bye-bye.
All right. Our next two items sort of go hand in hand. And so the first is an update on the Jordan Municipal Support Project, which the district has been involved in. So I'm just about to turn things over to CAO Glende as soon as she clicks all the right buttons. So fun watching this, Linda. Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. And I could not do any of my job without the amazing team that supports me. So thank you to IT. I am here tonight to provide council an update on the international program that we're a part of through Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And that is the Jordan Municipal Support Project. We are a partner with FCM in terms of this project. And then second on our agenda is to speak about the Partnerships for Municipal Innovation, Women in Local Leadership opportunity that we'd like to seek council endorsement to participate in. So to begin, the Jordan Municipal Support Project started back in 2019 when I was invited to present at a conference. And then following that, we were invited to become a formal municipal partner. And two of our staff have been helping with that project primarily. Megan Latimer, our emergency management coordinator, and Jenny Small, our OH&S coordinator with HR. Megan's been able to join us tonight. Jenny is on holiday, so I'll do my best to cover the update from Jenny. This is just a picture from the semi-annual report of some of the work that goes on in Jordan. Health and safety. So the FCM team that works in Amman, Jordan, reached out and asked if we had an expert in health and safety that could support them. And of course we do with Ms. Small. She helped with some smaller projects in Jordan, a community recycling sorting center and a vehicle maintenance shop in terms of their safety plans for the workshops. So she was able to introduce some new concepts, including the hierarchy of controls and employee engagement and two-way communication when addressing safety issues. Additionally, she provided some health and safety for their administration building. And this is where we learned that in a country like Jordan, we have a lot of similar challenges and a lot of challenges that aren't similar. And an example here is that employees can still smoke inside in Jordan. So talking about air quality and then employee wellness and smoking cessation resources is something that here in Canada we dealt with many years ago. So Jenny has really enjoyed working for the project. Certainly I've been getting feedback from the FCM team that her expertise and support has been extraordinarily valuable to the municipalities there in Jordan. And for Jenny, she's finding it a great opportunity because the OH&S practices are transferable around the world. Crisis management. Oh, I have the wrong slideshow up. If you can give me 30 seconds. Sorry, Megan. Like I said, strengths and weaknesses, right? Okay. I'm going to have to go with the PDF version. So do I just bring it over here? Okay. If I may, I'll pass it over to Megan.
Thanks, Linda, and good evening, Council. So I've been, I have the pleasure of supporting the JMSP program with crisis management planning since July of 2020. Initially, we were focused on supporting pandemic response planning as Jordan entered into their first wave. And since then, I've been working with the JMSP team and the partner municipalities over there on more general crisis and emergency management planning. The pandemic response plan template that was created with the JMSP team for Jordan has now been used by a number of other organizations within Jordan, in addition to the JMSP program, including the United Nations Development Program, as well as the central government. And the template has also been adopted for use by FCM country programs in Tunisia, Ukraine, and some of their other countries as well. And the photos you can see on the slide here, on the left, that's one of the COVID-19 test sites that was set up in Amman in Jordan. And then on the right, that's just a screenshot of the pandemic response template that we created for FCM. And Linda, I'll just get you to go to the next slide if you don't mind. And so we've also held a number of train the trainer sessions with the JMSP staff on basic crisis and emergency management. I had the opportunity in early November of this year, before all the atmospheric rivers hit us, to deliver a virtual workshop directly to the JMSP partner municipalities and to their different municipal staff on an introduction to crisis management planning. And one of the main resources that I've been supporting the JMSP program on is developing a crisis management video library. So this has really come about with our context in COVID of having to do everything virtually. Normally they would bring people across to Jordan to deliver in-person workshops, but as a workaround, we decided to create these video tutorials. And so all of the tutorials focus on, again, general crisis management planning, how to develop a crisis management team from your municipal staff, as well as potentially other organizations, and also crisis communications. And we actually had the opportunity to showcase some of the videos that Mayor Elliott made during the beginning of the pandemic, speak to the community as sort of best practice for how to communicate during a crisis. And so the photos that you can see here, there's some clips from the first and the second crisis management videos that we created. We're just waiting for the creation of the third video on crisis communications. All of the videos have been dubbed into Arabic and have Arabic and English subtitles, and also sign language included as well. And Linda, I'll just get you to go to the next slide, if you don't mind. Some of the other initiatives we've been working on with FCM for crisis management planning include delivering a presentation to FCM's Canadian staff and some of the partner municipalities here in Canada on crisis management and emergency management. And I also had the opportunity to present at a global event that was hosted by FCM by their Tunisia program for some of the other Middle Eastern and North African countries that FCM works with. The next step in the collaboration with the JMSP on crisis management will be to develop some additional tools and resources for creating plans and checklists. And hopefully there will be the opportunity to conduct a field visit to Jordan sometime in 2022, pandemic permitting. We're also hoping to create a larger team of emergency managers from municipalities across Canada, just to kind of deepen the breadth of support to the JMSP program and to offer some different perspectives on emergency management from other parts of Canada as well. So the photos here on this slide are just of the presentation at the global event that was organized by their Tunisia program, as well as some more clips from the videos that we created together. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with FCM and the JMSP team. It's been a great opportunity for me as well to learn about how they're managing emergencies and crises with far fewer resources than what we have available to us. And so, yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. And I will hand you back to Linda.
Thank you very much, Megan. The feedback I received from FCM is that they are just absolutely thrilled with the support that both Megan Latimer and Jenny Small have been providing to the municipalities in Jordan and the FCM team there. The work that I've been doing specifically to support the municipalities in Jordan is around strategic planning. And what the FCM team did is they partnered municipalities. So I've been partnering with a municipal councillor out of Sylvan Lake in Alberta. And we are working with the Sheehan municipality. And so they have a strategic plan. And then we have been meeting virtually on Zoom and assisting them with implementing that strategic plan. So formulating an operational plan that comes out of it and the challenges associated. In addition, the executive director of that municipality, it's the same position as CAO, but called executive director, is a woman named Ashwak. She's a professional engineer by trade, has worked in the private sector for years and is now what we would call a CAO in the municipality. And through COVID, she was really having a tough time, like most of us, right? It's been an exhausting couple of years. And so what we've started doing is having one-on-one Zoom calls. And what's interesting is I offered to meet with her to support her and perhaps provide some of my learnings. And what I've recognized is I'm learning as much as I'm sharing. And we have some common challenges around holding our staff up and supporting our team and our councils through COVID. And then we have some different challenges. So in Jordan, when an election happens, an interim council is appointed for about 6 months. So rather than going from one elected council to the next, there is a period of about 6 months where there's an interim council and its staff from the ministry that have been appointed. So Ashwak is dealing with an interim council for 6 months that have their own agenda and they're not elected. It is fascinating. Can you imagine? So the challenges that she has, she's got a strategic plan she's trying to implement, but now a whole new council. That's just one of many different challenges that I can't help her with other than to listen and have the same reaction as you do, that is just incredibly fascinating. So it's, I feel like I've developed a friendship. I have a colleague, across in Jordan who now can provide advice for me. And at the end, we both realized that we have more in common than I think we ever would have imagined. So in general, the partnership has been and continues to be incredibly rewarding from the point of view of us sharing our knowledge and then bringing that knowledge into Squamish as well, and just building municipal capacity around the world has been fantastic. Before I move on, are there any questions around the Jordan project?
Can you turn your mic off? Oh. Did I hear you or Megan correctly when she said that the template that she designed moved on to Tunisia and then UN agencies and then the Ukraine and other places?
I'll let Megan answer that question if she's still on.
Sure, yeah, through the mayor. Yes, that's correct. So it was adopted in country by a number of other agencies, including United Nations Development Program, and then FCM has actually used it in some of their other country programs as well. And it's been well received there as well, which has been great.
That's a pretty incredible ripple effect, Ms. Latimer. So well done.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the Jordan project? Thank you for that update. It's great to know how all three of you have created ripple effects through this project. Okay, on to PMI Will.
Thank you very much. So as update, the Jordan project did get extended through COVID and is slated to end in 2023. And as we get into the next presentation, I will address that overlap. So the Partners for Municipal Innovation, Women in Local Leadership is another FCM sponsored program with Global Affairs Canada. And unlike the Jordan project, there are several countries, 5, in both Asia and Africa. Up on the slide there, Benin, Cambodia, Ghana, Sri Lanka, Zambia are the 5 international countries. It is definitely focused on building the capacity of women in local government, both governance, so elected positions, as well as staff. and generally speaking, increase local government's capacity to deliver inclusive and gender responsive services. So this project is 5 years. It's slated to start in 2021 and go 2022, sorry. 2022 to 2027, so 5 years inclusive. The municipal contribution, similar to the Jordan project, is really to build relationships internationally, coordinating technical expertise teams. It's similar to Jordan, pandemic notwithstanding, will include missions abroad for the staff that are involved and invited. And then the other part is hosting study visits. And if council remembers, we did host a study visit here in Squamish with actually two women from Cambodia, individuals from Jordan, as well as FCM, and they came to Squamish. And it was a really fruitful day and enjoyable for everybody. So what are the benefits to the district? Well, certainly it improves leadership skills for any of the staff that are involved. With the examples you've just seen with Jenny and Megan, you know, it's an incredible opportunity to grow our own individual team members. It can help us to build our own policies and initiatives around gender inclusivity. We certainly, it's a priority and we're working on it, and there's always room to improve. So whether we're learning from our international partners or FCM and other municipalities in the programs, and that learning can be applied locally. So the expression of interest or the call to action to apply came quickly. So we submitted an application by the deadline, which was December 12th, recognizing we couldn't get to council in advance of that. We were chosen for an interview, which we completed last Friday. Mayor Elliott, myself, and Ms. Keely Kidner, who is our staff lead on our IDEA committee, participated in that interview. The motion before you is conditional, of course, on us being chosen to be a participant or, sorry, a partner, at which point we would bring back, there's a memorandum of understanding similar to what you signed for the Jordan project. Yes, these projects overlap. And in terms of staff capacity, the way that I see this project is that it is an opportunity for even more staff to be involved in an international program. And it's really motivating for the staff that are involved and want to do it. They do consider it a passion project. Their work here does not get compromised. I can tell you that most of us do the work outside of hours, but we love it. My priority would be still the Jordan Municipal Project as the lead on that, similar to Megan and Jenny, and then we would open up the opportunity for other staff to participate in PMI will, should there be the capacity to do so. So we're confident that we can manage the overlap by distributing it and opening up the opportunity to others. So with that, we do have a resolution, and I will pass it back to council for questions. Thank you.
Ms. Glenday, could you just, for the public, discuss how expenses are covered?
Thank you very much. That's a great point. The expenses are covered by FCM and Global Affairs Canada. So any travel expenses, should staff or an elected official go on a mission, it's completely covered by FCM. The cost to the district is in kind, so staff time. Thank you for that question.
Council, any questions about the PMI will project? Council French.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just wondering about reporting out, reporting back, and keeping council posted. Is there a plan for that?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. We would similarly report out as we do with the Jordan Municipal Support Project, is that we can provide you a general overview at specific intervals to council. There are documents that are produced out of the projects that aren't for public consumption, but are provided to council.
Anything else? Ms. Glenday, would a municipality work with all 5 of those countries, or would we be slotted into one particular?
Thank you. It's very likely that we would be slotted into one particular country rather than trying to support 5 different countries. As well, what may happen, similar to how I'm supporting the strategic planning in Jordan, is there's one municipality, I'm partnered with a different Canadian municipality. So we may be partnered, should we be part of it, with another Canadian municipality supporting a particular country. We were asked if we had a preference, and we indicated that not particularly, like there's no real affiliation for Squamish for any of the countries. So we would take the country that we were provided.
And then the documents in our agenda package also mention that community organizations can be involved. And, you know, we have feminist-based organizations like House on Women's Center. And so would we look at that opportunity, if successful, to engage more broadly with community partners?
Yes, definitely. At this point, the project lacks specific detail, but in the interview and the materials, it does discuss their desire that the municipalities that they partner with engage the community, so beyond our own organization. And that is definitely something that we would do, given we have such strong different agencies and community groups in Squamish.
Thanks. Any other questions, Council? All right, so the motion is before you on the screen. Staff are recommending that we enter into a formal partnership with FCM for the Women in Local Leadership Program, conditional on a successful application. Is anyone moving that? Council Herford, second by Council Race. Any other comments? Council Herford, and then Council Race.
Thank you. I think involvement in this program builds on the successes of the Jordan Municipal Support Program, and I think it not only builds capacity around the world and shares our expertise, but there's a great benefit to the community of Squamish with the learnings coming back the other way, and looking at problems from different points of view is always very helpful. So I'm very happy to support this, and I look forward to seeing the output of some of this work and being kept abreast of these of the great work that's happening. So thank you very much for bringing it forward.
Council Race.
Thank you. Also happy to support this. I think, you know, there's probably many benefits, but 2 that jump out at me is one is an opportunity for our staff to, I think, enhance their professional skills, reach outside the municipal staff area and use their skills in other areas. The second one is the recognition, I think, that while we are a small community in Canada, we are also part of the larger global community, and so can contribute to the betterment of that community with this program. Happy to support it.
Council Pettengill.
Yeah, I'm also very happy to support this, I think, for the reasons mentioned and outlined, but also, you know, I think rightly so, we are very focused on some of the challenges locally. And I think something like this, one more benefit is it causes us to sort of look outside our own circumstances and think about problems differently, and hopefully come up with some different and more creative solutions locally, as well as sharing what we have to offer the rest of the world. And so I'm really enthusiastic about this, and hope we're successful.
Seeing no more hands, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Gonde, for bringing this opportunity to us. Okay, next up, 9B1, wastewater treatment plant upgrade grant application support. Mr. Ralston?
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
My name is David Ralston. I'm the Manager of Municipal Infrastructure with the District of Squamish. I'm here this evening seeking council endorsement for an upcoming grant opportunity under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program under the Environmental Quality Stream. That program is committing up to $270 million towards cost-sharing projects across British Columbia. One of the program objectives is seeking projects that increase the capacity to treat wastewater. Local governments are eligible to receive up to 73.3% of overall project costs. Staff have reviewed eligible projects and concluded that the wastewater treatment plant project is in the highest need and best fits the grant criteria. A little background on that project. The district's liquid waste management plan identified that we currently don't meet redundancy requirements contained in the provincial municipal wastewater regulations for our bioreactors at the plant. After extensive pre-design efforts, the preferred option to address that redundancy shortfall is to construct a third treatment train next to the existing circular tank at the wastewater treatment plant. The preliminary cost estimate for that is $11 million, and the grant application is therefore requesting a total of $8,066,300, with the remainder of funding to come from municipal sources. The project is included in the current financial plan and is funded through a combination of development cost charges and wastewater utility reserves. The grant application would therefore subsidize municipal costs, and this application doesn't commit the district to any new costs. The grant funding would alleviate pressure on wastewater utility reserves. And the grant program has specific suggested wording resolutions. So the recommendations are that the District of Squamish submit an application for grant funding for wastewater treatment plant upgrades through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Environmental Quality Program, and that the District of Squamish supports the project and commits to its share of the project, which is $2,933,700, as well as cost overruns. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ralston. Council, any questions on this? Councilor Benko.
Yeah, thanks. I think you answered, but I just want to clarify the interaction. It sounds like there isn't one between this and DCC fees we have collected or will collect in the future. This is just in terms of our wastewater treatment fund and so on. It would impact those amounts. We would need less from that reserve, but DCCs would not change whether or not we get this grant. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, I believe this would actually alleviate expenses that would otherwise come from DCCs. The municipal, my understanding is that the municipal share of the project will still come from a combination of DCCs and wastewater utility reserves, according to the percent allocation in the DCC bylaw. And so this would alleviate pressure on both DCCs and the wastewater utility reserves.
So just if I can follow up, and if we've already, because we've been collecting DCCs for the purpose of this project, does that mean we would refund some DCCs then, or would we be able to do, say, more climate mitigation as part of the project? I'm just about that.
That's a good question. I would have to defer to finance to determine if we would have to refund. I think that in general, we don't have sufficient DCC reserves to fund all of the projects that are currently on tap. And so I think what it would likely do is just free up those reserves to use on other high need projects. And it would then also reduce DCC rates in the future, since we wouldn't have to raise as much money to fund those future projects, since we wouldn't be drawing down as much on the DCC reserves as part of this project.
Anything else on this, council? Would someone like to move the staff recommendation? Moved by Councilor Race, seconded by Councilor Herford. Any further comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Ralston. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
We're on to item 10, our consent agenda. So council, if there's anything on here you'd like to pull or anything you are in conflict with, please make that known now. Councilor Anderson.
Yes, Mayor Elliott, I'd like to pull item number 3 under the minutes, the committee of the whole minutes for December 14.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, would someone like to move the remaining consent agenda? Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Race. Any opposed? Motion carries. Action requested. So we have a letter from Mr. Vesely regarding the lawn bowling greens restoration, that this be referred to staff for follow-up. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any comments? Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll also move to refer this letter to staff, and in doing so, note that the lawn bowling facility at Eagle Winds has been caught in, I think, what can best be described as a forgotten issue. This council hasn't had any meaningful discussion about the facility, and back in June of 2016, the GM of Development Services and Public Works reported, along with the Parks and Cemetery Supervisor at that time, that the facility wasn't being used much because it needed to be improved, and the cost of improving the facility wasn't justifiable back in 2016. And in researching this issue, I found no other references to lawn bowling in council meeting and agendas and minutes since 2016. Maybe I'm not a great sleuth, but I think it's because there just hasn't been any discussion on it. And with a group now interested in raising money to improve the facility, this is a signal to council that it's time to reconsider the future of that lawn bowling green. And lawn bowling is an excellent example of an outdoor activity that falls in the low impact part of Hardwired for Adventure on that spectrum. So I think that the time has come to test the waters again and see if there's enough community interest to determine if it's time to re-explore improving this facility. And I see this letter and referring it as a first step to potentially igniting that re-exploration. Thanks.
Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. The second letter from S. Supper regarding Park House petition regarding pickleball courts be referred to the General Manager of Community Planning and Infrastructure for a response. Moved by Councillor Hertford, seconded by, I'll second that. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. The letter from J. McNichol regarding Squamish Day Lager Sports be referred to the General Manager of Community Services for a response. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Hertford. Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, that the correspondence received from S. Dubois regarding SPCA support for changes to rodenticide use in Squamish be referred to the Director of Engineering for a response. Moved by Councillor Hertford, seconded by Councillor Brace. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, approval of minutes, recommendation from Committee of the Whole. Is this which date were the Committee of the Whole minutes you pulled, Councillor?
December 14 Committee of the Whole, Mayor.
Is it with regard to this motion or separate?
No, it is.
Okay.
It is separate from this one.
Okay, thank you. That the District of Squamish endorse the Brennan Park Fields and Lands Master Plan with amendments to the language for the following, and that staff develop policy that includes criteria and best practices for setting pickleball courts in the District of Squamish. Moved by Councillor Hertford, seconded by Councillor French. Any comments on this? Seeing none, any opposed? Motion carries. That single-use item bylaw amendments, that council received the report from community planning dated December 14th regarding checkout bags for information prior to considering the bylaws for readings. We direct staff to update to amend the single-use items to ban polystyrene takeout serviceware. That staff amend the single-use item bylaw to limit distribution of plastic utensils to on-demand only. And that council direct staff to amend the single-use item bylaw to ban distribution of plastic stir sticks. Goodbye plastic. Moved by Councillor Hertford, seconded by Councillor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. That council received the BCR rezoning report for information and feedback from December 14th Committee of the Whole, and that council directs staff to resolve any outstanding issues prior to bringing the Oceanfront BCR rezoning application to a future committee meeting. Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Elliott, my proposed amendment to the minutes may have some bearing on this particular motion, recommendation.
Ms. Pollock, how do I deal with this? Because Councillor, where would I deal with the minutes that he pulled?
Yes, it is peripheral, if you like. It is one of the, an interpretation of the minutes might relate to the recommendations reference to feedback as provided.
So can we address that in business arising from the minutes if it's not directly related to this motion?
I would be happy with that.
All right, so on this motion, is there someone to move that? Moved by Council Race, seconded by Council Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then that the District of Squamish receive the North Crumpet Neighborhood Plan Engagement Report 1 as provided on December 14th for information and feedback. Someone want to move that? Moved by Councilor Anderson, seconded by Councilor Pettengill. Any comments on this one? Any opposed? Motion carries. Development cost charge bylaw that the District of Squamish accept the proposed DCC rates for information and authorize staff to proceed with stakeholder consultation. Moved by Councilor French. I'll second that. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Councilor Anderson, business arising from the minutes. You pulled December 14th Committee of the Whole.
Thank you. Yes. The minutes for December 14th Committee of the Whole under the Squamish Oceanfront BCR rezoning discussion council comments includes the following statement. Industry covenant should include information for the noise, vibration, light, dust, odor, and other indicators. I interpret that as a strong, too strong a statement for staff's purposes. We would not want to imply this much. I would like to offer an alternate reading, and I will then move that the minutes for December 14 Committee of the Whole meeting be approved with the following amendment. That statement under council comment should instead read, industry covenant should consider oceanfront precedents and potential scope. And I would speak to that if there's a seconder.
Is there a seconder? Seconding? Seconded by Councilor Pettengill. And perhaps in your comments, Councilor Anderson, you can clarify why using broader language is better than using the more specific language?
Yes. So there are in fact two covenants, industry covenants that are presently in existence, and this is a new area of development within the sub-area plan for the oceanfront. It will have distinct issues for consideration in the covenant, different neighborhood interface context, and I think it'd be best to leave it more broad and up to staff to assess further as to what type of covenant is necessary and to be recommended for this particular zone, and with reference to the precedent covenants, of which there are two that already exist. So we don't want to tie the hands of staff in summary, but let staff conduct a new assessment as to the type of covenant that is appropriate for this zone.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments on that? We've got everyone thinking, Councilor Anderson. Councilor Herford.
Yeah, I'm just having an interesting time thinking about the conversation and then the minutes of that conversation, and then this as potentially deviating from that rather than a correction to. And procedurally, I'm just trying to figure out what we're doing. Are we opening up this discussion again, which I'm not particularly opposed to. I'm just curious about the process there, and anyone's want to give me some context there, but that's the only reason I'm making a face and the wheels are turning in my mind, because I'm not quite sure where we're at. In general, we don't reopen the discussion, which is where I feel like we are right now.
Just Ms. Pollock, are the amendments that Councilor Anderson proposed, they're changes from what the minute taker recorded in the discussion? So Ms. Pollock said that council consensus is required to amend anything in this regard. So does that answer your question, Councilor Herford? So it can be changed, but there needs to be consensus on that change, or council may decide that the language that's here reflects the conversation that was had on the day. Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I actually am suggesting that it is a correction and that the minutes were not, did not record the conversation accurately. But I am happy to consider a new consideration of the issue. However, being the one who spoke to this issue, I did not suggest that staff should include information for vibration, light, dust, odor, and other indicators. And I think I was pretty clear about that. What I did say was that the present covenants, the two on the Ocean Run Peninsula, do not consider these, but I did not suggest that this new one should.
Councillor Herford.
No, that's, thank you for that clarity. And I was also using this as a case study for in future as we have these things. This particular point doesn't seem that contentious to me, and I'm fine with the change. Thank you.
Any other comments? Some people still look like they're thinking hard. Councillor Pettingill?
No, I'm inclined to support this. I think I've found myself in the same position as Councillor Anderson, where you're not sure if what you're intending came across, and this, to me, sounds like that situation. I'm comfortable with the clarification. So,
Councillor Rice?
Thank you. I did actually think I recalled other things being mentioned in that discussion. But I think the amendment it gets us to the same place anyway. I think staff will, looking at this, perhaps consider either way which of these various intrusions should be covered by a covenant. So I can support the motion just to go by it.
Ms. Pollock, did you get that wording? Or can Councillor Anderson confirm it with you after the meeting? Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Nothing under item 16. There are a number of in-camera announcements that have been posted under item 17. But there's no motions we have to consider around that. We did not have any unscheduled public attendance. Is there anyone on the line to ask questions? No. Okay, councillor staff announcements. I just have one. And council received this beautiful card from Kate, who is in grade 6. We don't often get holiday greeting cards from young people, and certainly not ones that compliment us on the work that we're doing in town. And she and her puppy love all the parks and wanted to thank us for the work that we do. So thank you, Kate. That was very generous of you to take the time, and all of council has read that. So thank you. Any other announcements? Councillor French.
Well, with this being the last meeting before the holidays, I wish to thank the District of Squamish staff for their hard work in this past year, and wish all the members of the District of Squamish staff a happy holiday season, and express my gratitude and thanks to my council colleagues for consistently producing respectful and constructive dialogue in this chamber, and wish you all best of the season. Thank you.
Councillor Pettingill.
yeah, thanks. And I apologize. The 5-year financial plan title threw me for some reason, and so the thing I wanted to touch on the most, I neglected to, but I just want to, and we call it out a few. I am, but
Point of order.
I'm not redebating it. I'm just sort of, yeah. One of the things that I think made the budget easier for me and has helped the whole time is the strategic plan. When I see other bodies and the work they do, I'm just so grateful that we came up with a plan that's very clear and concise. And I find that it keeps us on track. And every time there's different perspectives and philosophies, which there are in this council, it is a thing that I think really helps to bring us together. So I'm really glad this group has found a way to come up with a plan that we can all agree to, and that we've all put in the effort to stick to it. And I think that has really helped. And I guess on that note, I also want to thank council for such a great year. It's been a tough year. I think everyone's feeling it. There's a lot of tough things going on right now. And so thank you to council. Thank you to staff. Yeah, it's been a tough one. And I think it speaks well to our community that we've come through it so well, not completely unscathed, but lots of challenges ahead still. But I'm feeling good as I move into look forward to the new year. So once again, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else this evening? I will just wish everyone happy holidays. I think this year is ending on the note of the fact that we've got to be abundantly practical and endlessly optimistic. So I wish everyone well. Thank you, staff, for supporting us this evening, and to our public that attended, and to my council colleagues who always make it so much fun to be with you on Tuesday. So thank you very much. All right, with that, motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. See everyone in the new year. Stay safe.